She left my granddaughter alone at the airport. That was the moment everything broke open. Before you watch, take a breath. Because this story begins with a betrayal no grandmother should ever witness. Stay with me till the end. You won't believe how everything unfolds. I saw her before she saw me, my sweet 8-year-old sitting stiffly on a plastic seat near gate C12 at LaGuardia. She wasn't crying. That's what caught my breath. She just sat there with her little backpack on her lap, fingers gripping the straps until her knuckles turned white. The loudspeaker overhead announced another departure, and the rolling suitcase beside her wobbled each time someone brushed past. But she didn't look up, not even when a stroller bumped her knee. She just kept staring at the floor like she had been told not to move. My first instinct was to rush toward her, but something told me to slow down. The scene felt off, too quiet, too arranged, too deliberate. I walked closer, keeping my steps steady even though my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my wrists. The airport smelled like stale pretzels and disinfectant. Every few seconds the sliding doors hissed behind me, letting in blasts of cold December air. But she sat there as if frozen in a world only she could see. When she finally lifted her head and spotted me, her eyes didn't light up. They widened in relief, yes, but not joy. And that told me more than any explanation ever could. "Nana?" she whispered, her voice thin and unsure, like she wasn't convinced I was real. "I'm here, sweetheart," I said softly, kneeling in front of her. "Where's your mom? Where's your dad?" She swallowed hard. Her lashes fluttered. And then she did something that twisted something deep inside me. She looked over her shoulder, scanning the boarding area behind us like she expected someone to jump out. That was when my phone vibrated. One text message. From my daughter-in-law. "We decided she stays." Just those 3 words. Final. I didn't gasp. I didn't curse. I didn't even blink. I simply let the message sit on my screen, glowing in the harsh airport lighting, while a quiet, steady calm washed over me. Women my age don't need noise to express anger. Silence can do far more damage. I slipped the phone back into my purse and looked at my granddaughter again. Her lips trembled when she tried to speak, but I placed my hand on hers. "No rush," I murmured. "We'll talk in the car." I saw a gate agent glance at us. Once, twice, then again, like she knew something about this situation she wasn't sure she should say. She avoided eye contact though. That told me enough. "Come on, honey," I said. "Let's get you out of here." She stood slowly, like standing was an instruction she had been waiting for. She reached for my hand, but before her fingers touched mine she paused. "Am I allowed?" she whispered. Those 3 words told me everything I needed to know. We walked through the terminal at an unhurried pace, weaving through travelers rushing to catch flights. She stayed pressed close to me, glancing right and left every time a woman with long brown hair passed by, as if mistaking them for her mother. At one point she stiffened when she saw a man hurrying with luggage, but relaxed only when he walked past without noticing us. At the parking garage elevator she spoke again. Mom said you wouldn't come." I pressed the elevator button and kept my voice even. "Did she tell you why?" She shook her head. "She just said it's better if I don't ask questions." The elevator dinged and we stepped inside. A group of tired travelers squeezed in behind us, but all I could focus on was how small my granddaughter's hand looked wrapped in mine. When I was 30 I thought strength was loud. Now at 67 I know it's the quiet moments where your whole life shifts into place. When the doors opened onto the concrete parking deck, a gust of cold air whipped against us. She shivered and I draped my coat over her shoulders. The sound of engines echoed through the structure, and somewhere nearby a car alarm chirped in irritation. But she kept scanning the shadows like something might be hiding there. All the unease in her movements felt like breadcrumbs, scattered carelessly by someone who assumed I'd never bother to follow them. We reached my car and I opened the back door. She climbed in without being asked. Before I closed it she tugged on my sleeve. "Nana, don't tell Mom I told you anything. She said it makes trouble." I brushed her cheek gently. "You're not making trouble. You're telling the truth." But even as I said it I didn't push for more. I've raised children, seen marriages fall apart, watched people pretend to be better than they are. Truth surfaces on its own when a child feels safe enough to speak. As I slid into the driver's seat my phone buzzed again. This time no message. Just my daughter-in-law's name calling. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. Some people think silence means defeat. But they forget silence also means planning. I backed out of the space and pulled onto the exit ramp. My granddaughter watched the airport shrink behind us through the window. The winter sky hung low and gray, matching the heaviness in her expression. Halfway across the George Washington Bridge, I noticed her legs bouncing nervously. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "are you scared?" She hesitated. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice even though we were the only two in the car. "Mom said if I didn't behave on the trip, she'd put me somewhere I'd learn to listen. And then when we got to the airport, she said I didn't deserve to come with them." My grip tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. But my voice stayed calm. "Did she hurt you?" I asked, careful not to sound panicked. She shook her head. "No. But she grabbed my wrist real hard when Dad wasn't looking. And she kept yelling when we were packing. I didn't know what I did wrong." Her little voice cracked, and she quickly wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of my coat as if afraid crying would get her in trouble again. I slowed the car as we approached a toll booth, giving myself a moment to breathe. The attendant barely glanced at us as he waved us through, but my mind was racing. Her mother didn't just abandon her. She prepared her to accept abandonment. That requires planning. And people who plan cruelty rarely stop at one act. When we finally pulled into my driveway, the sky had already begun turning darker. A few early holiday lights flickered from neighboring houses, but mine remained dim. I hadn't bothered decorating this year. Grief and family tension had drained the joy out of it. But as my granddaughter stepped out of the car, her small figure wrapped in my oversized coat, something like purpose stirred inside me. I unlocked the front door and we walked inside. The scent of cinnamon tea, my afternoon habit, still lingered faintly. I guided her to the couch and turned on a small lamp. "You're safe here," I told her. "You hear me? No matter what happens next." She nodded, but I could see she didn't fully believe it yet. Children learn trust slowly when someone has broken it piece by piece. I made her a warm drink, then sat beside her while she took small sips. Every few minutes, she glanced at the door as if expecting her mother to burst in. Around dinner time, my phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. My daughter-in-law didn't send words this time, just missed call after missed call, like she was testing whether she could still command my attention with the press of a button. When she finally sent another text, it wasn't an apology. "Return her. Return her." Like a package. I inhaled slowly, steadying the anger simmering deep in my chest. Instead of replying, I set the phone face down on the table. At 7:30, headlights swept across my living room window. Not my son's car. The wrong angle. The wrong brightness. My granddaughter stiffened. I stood, smoothed the front of my sweater and walked to the door. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I simply opened it. And there she was. My daughter-in-law. Smirking, arms crossed, her voice dripping with false confidence. "Where is she?" she demanded. I stepped onto the porch, letting the cold air settle around me. And before I let her speak another word, I asked the question I'd been holding since that moment in the airport. "Why did you leave her there?" I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just waited. And the look on her face told me the real story was only just beginning. But she recovered quickly, as people who rely on lies often do. Her posture shifted, chin lifting ever so slightly as if she'd rehearsed this moment and now had to perform her part. "I didn't leave her," she said, brushing past me into my own living room without waiting for permission. "You misunderstood. She wandered off. We were about to come back for her." A practiced tone. Casual enough to sound believable, sharp enough to demand agreement. I closed the door quietly behind her, not reacting. She hated that. Silence made her nervous because she couldn't control it. My granddaughter sat small and tense on the couch, still wrapped in my coat. When her mother entered, she shrank into the cushions instinctively. My daughter-in-law noticed, and for a moment, something flickered in her expression. Annoyance, not guilt. "You're making this dramatic," she continued, turning toward me again. "Kids wander. She's old enough to listen, but she doesn't. You know how she is." I had raised children. I had taught in classrooms. I had volunteered with families for decades. I'd seen countless parents shift blame to their children, but hearing those words directed at my quiet, gentle granddaughter stirred something deep inside me. "She didn't wander," I said calmly. "She told me you told her to stay put." My daughter-in-law blinked too slowly, a tell of someone deciding which version of the truth would benefit them most. Well, she must have misunderstood, she muttered, waving a dismissive hand. I was stressed. The boys were loud. Your son was running late. I can't keep track of everyone at once. She knows that. That part at least I believed. She never kept track of her. I watched her carefully. Her hair was perfectly styled, makeup untouched, clothes spotless. Far too polished for someone claiming a chaotic family scene. A faint scent of expensive perfume drifted past me as she stepped closer, lowering her voice. Just give her back, she said. We'll fix this at home. No need to escalate things. The word escalate sat between us like a challenge. Before I could answer, my granddaughter spoke, barely above a whisper. Mom, I didn't wander. My daughter-in-law snapped her head toward her, eyes narrowing for a split second before smoothing into a smile that didn't match the tension in her jaw. Honey, you don't remember right. You were upset. You always mix things up when you're upset. My granddaughter began rubbing her wrist, the same one she'd said her mother grabbed earlier. I made a mental note of the gesture. Years of experience had taught me that children often repeat motions tied to moments that frighten them. I think, I said, stepping between them, it's best she stays with me tonight. You and my son can pick her up tomorrow once everyone has calmed down. Her eyes hardened, just a flash, but by then I already knew what kind of woman she was. People who fear exposure always react too quickly. We're leaving town tonight, she said. She has to come. She wasn't asking. She was asserting ownership. As if my granddaughter were an item she'd forgotten in a shopping cart. And where is my son? I asked. She hesitated for the first time. Busy. He's packing the car. That answer didn't fit with her earlier claim that they had been about to come back for her. The stories didn't match. Manipulators often trip over their own lies when rushed. Before she could say anything else, my phone buzzed again. This time my son texting a brief, confused message asking where I was and whether everything was okay. So he wasn't packing. And he wasn't with her. That inconsistency fed the unease brewing in my chest. My daughter-in-law must have seen something shift in my expression, because she suddenly straightened her posture, smoothing her coat. You're twisting this, she said. You always exaggerate. Your son said you'd turn this into a disaster. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the front door and simply said, "Good night." Her nostrils flared ever so slightly. She wasn't used to being dismissed. She stepped outside but leaned close enough that I could see the thin, sharp line of tension around her mouth. "You're overstepping," she whispered. Women my age have heard that line enough times to know it translates to, "You're getting too close to the truth." When I locked the door behind her, my granddaughter exhaled a trembling breath she'd been holding since her mother walked in. I kept the rest of the evening calm. Warm meal, soft blanket, gentle conversation. The ordinary things children cling to when their world feels unpredictable. She didn't say much, but she stayed close. That alone told me more than any words could. Later, after she had fallen asleep on the couch, I pulled out my old notebook, the one I hadn't touched since my volunteer work with community families. I didn't write much, just a few short notes. Contradicting stories. Fear response when mother enters. Physical avoidance. Possible pattern of intimidation. Patterns matter. Tiny details reveal what people try to hide. The next morning, after dropping my granddaughter at school, I went straight to the front office. A woman my age, the school secretary, greeted me with a warm smile. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "I just needed to confirm a few things," I said gently. "Has my granddaughter been okay here? Any concerns?" The secretary's smile faded slightly. She exchanged a quick glance with the attendance aide at the next desk. A silent exchange passed between them. Hesitation, uncertainty, caution. "Well," she began, lowering her voice, "she's been absent quite a bit lately." That was news to me. My son always claimed she rarely missed school. "How many days?" I asked. "More than we're allowed to ignore," she admitted. "And some early dismissals we didn't expect. Teachers mentioned she seems tired often." A pressure settled behind my ribs. "Has anyone spoken with her parents?" She nodded. "Yes. Her mother said there were medical reasons. But no documentation was ever provided." Medical reasons. Another lie. And more breadcrumbs. I thanked her, kept my composure and walked out into the chilly morning air. The wind smelled like burning leaves from a nearby yard, settling around me like the first whisper of a storm. Next, I visited her old nanny, the one they fired suddenly last spring. She lived only a few blocks away. When she opened the door, her eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, hi," she said. "Is everything okay with the little one?" "She's safe," I said. "But I need to ask you something." The relief in her shoulders told me she had been holding on to a worry for months. She invited me in, offering tea before sitting across from me with a nervous twist in her hands. When I told her, carefully, what had happened at the airport, she covered her mouth. "She said she'd never do that again," the nanny whispered. "Do what again?" Her eyes darted to mine, then away. "She left her before. Not at an airport. But at a store once. On purpose. Told her to think about her attitude. I found her crying near the carts. My stomach turned. Did you tell my son?" I asked. "I tried," she said quietly. "But his wife got to him first. Told him I fabricated it to keep my job. He believed her." That sounded exactly like the woman I knew at the door last night. The nanny hesitated, then added, almost reluctantly, "She has a temper. A sharp one. I never saw her hit the kids, but she'd grab their arms hard. And she'd scream sometimes, not like a parent frustrated, but like someone who needed control." Control. The word echoed. When I left the nanny's house, I sat in my car for a long moment, absorbing everything. The morning sun reflected off the windshield of a nearby truck, forcing me to squint. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere down the street, a lawn mower hummed to life. Ordinary sounds for an increasingly unordinary picture. I wasn't jumping to conclusions. I was connecting dots others had ignored. So I needed more. So I called my neighbor Carol, who volunteered at the local community center and often saw my daughter-in-law during events. "Have you noticed anything unusual lately?" I asked her. Carol paused. "Well, she's been bringing someone new around. A man. Not her husband. People assumed he was a relative, but he didn't act like one." She seemed nervous and excited at the same time. Another breadcrumb. Another piece of a puzzle forming a shape I didn't yet want to name. By late afternoon, I had gathered more information than I anticipated, but I still hadn't confronted my son. I needed to verify every detail myself before speaking to him. Emotional reactions don't win battles. Facts do. That evening, after homework and dinner with my granddaughter, I stepped out onto the porch to breathe in the cool night air. The streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk, and somewhere a radio played softly through an open garage door. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message from a teacher at the school, one I'd known for decades. "Can we talk? It's about your granddaughter." Another line. Another clue. Another truth waiting to be uncovered. I stared at the phone, feeling the weight of everything building. The lies my daughter-in-law told were unraveling. And something told me I had only scratched the surface. But before I could respond, headlights appeared at the end of my street. My son's car. He stepped out with a conflicted expression, torn between loyalty and doubt. And I knew the next conversation would decide everything that came after. My son stepped out of the car with that same conflicted look I'd seen on him when he was a teenager caught between truth and loyalty. The porch light cast a dull glow across his face, highlighting the worry lines he'd picked up far too young. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and took a hesitant step toward me. "Mom," he said softly, "I need to understand what's going on." His voice was tired. Not angry. Not accusatory. Just tired. And I felt that in my bones. I motioned for him to follow me to the porch swing so we wouldn't disturb the sleeping child inside. The wooden slats creaked as we sat, the familiar rhythm grounding me even as my chest tightened. "Did she tell you what happened?" I asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. "She said you exaggerated. That there was a misunderstanding. That our daughter wandered off because she was distracted." That choice of wording, our daughter instead of her daughter, told me he wasn't entirely certain whose version to believe. I let out a slow breath. She didn't wander off. I found her exactly where she was told to wait. My son stared at the floorboards, jaw flexing. "Mom, do you have any proof?" Normally that question would sting. But tonight it didn't. Because I understood something important. He wasn't challenging me. He was begging for clarity in a situation that had probably escalated behind closed doors before I ever stepped foot in the airport. I have enough to start asking questions, I said. More than enough. He looked up sharply. Start asking questions? What does that mean? Before I could answer, a pair of headlights turned into my driveway again. A small sedan with official plates. My son stiffened. I didn't call anyone, he whispered. I didn't either, I said. The car door opened and a woman stepped out, mid-50s, neat gray blazer, clipboard in hand. Her eyes were kind but sharp, the type of look that has seen too many family situations turn complicated. I recognized the agency emblem instantly. Child Protective Services. She approached with a small, professional smile. Mrs. Parker? I'm investigator Elaine Morris. We received a report earlier today, and I'm here to conduct an initial welfare check. My son's head whipped toward me. A report? From who? I didn't blink. From me. His breath left him in a rush. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Because I needed to verify things myself first, I said quietly. And because sometimes a child needs protection before a parent is ready to see the truth. He didn't argue. He just sagged slightly, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Investigator Morris looked between us. Is the child present? Yes, I said. She's inside asleep. The investigator nodded. Before I speak with her, I need to ask a few preliminary questions. Privately. My son gestured toward me. Talk to her first. She knows more than I do. The investigator and I stepped into the living room. The warmth of the house felt heavier now, the ticking clock louder than usual. My granddaughter slept curled on the couch, her small hand resting near her cheek. The investigator's eyes softened when she saw her. She looks comfortable, she whispered. I try, I said. We moved to the dining table. She set down her clipboard. Can you walk me through your concerns? Briefly for now. So I did. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. Just facts. Dates. Patterns. Behaviors. Inconsistencies. Every detail I'd gathered. Her absences from school, the nanny's statement, the fear reactions, the conflicting airport stories. As I spoke, the investigator's pen moved quickly. She didn't interrupt. She didn't question my motives. She simply listened with a practiced ear. When I finished, she sat quietly for a moment, thinking. This aligns with other reported concerns, she finally said. I blinked. Other concerns? She nodded slowly. I can't detail previous reports, but I can say that this is not the first flagged incident involving your daughter-in-law. A chill slid down my spine. So there had been signs even before this. And he hadn't known. My son, standing on the porch with guilt in his eyes, had been kept in the dark. May I speak with her? The investigator asked, motioning toward the couch. Of course, I said softly. She approached gently, kneeling beside my granddaughter. She woke slowly, blinking in confusion. The investigator spoke in a calm, reassuring voice, asking simple questions. Was she okay? Did she feel safe here? Did she understand why she was being spoken to? Then she asked, Do you remember what happened at the airport? My granddaughter's lip trembled. She glanced at me and I nodded encouragingly. She told me to sit and not move, she whispered. She said she'd be back if I stayed quiet. The investigator didn't push further. She placed a comforting hand on the child's blanket, thanked her gently and stood. When we returned to the porch, my son was pacing. He stopped when he saw us. Well, he asked. The investigator was composed. I'll need to interview your wife and visit your home. But based on what I've heard tonight, there is enough cause to open a formal investigation. My son closed his eyes. Not in denial. No, I recognized that look. He was piecing together past moments, small incidents he'd ignored, excuses he'd accepted too easily. The investigator continued, She will not be removed from this home tonight. She appears calm, well cared for and safe here. My son nodded numbly. Thank you. When she left, we stood together under the cold night sky, the silence stretching between us like a fragile thread. He finally spoke. Mom, why didn't I see it? Because when a woman like his wife builds a mask long enough, she makes everyone around her wear one too. But I didn't say that. Instead, I rested a hand on his shoulder. You see now, I said gently. And that's what matters. He nodded, wiping his face quickly. I'm going home. I need to talk to her. I watched him leave with a tightness in my chest. Some conversations crack people open in ways they never forget. The next morning came too quickly. I barely slept, my thoughts tangled in unfinished questions. My granddaughter sat at the kitchen table with her cereal, humming softly, a small sound that soothed something inside me. Then there was a knock at the door. My stomach tightened. When I opened it, there stood Investigator Morris again. Same calm demeanor, same clipboard. But this time her face held something more urgent. I need to conduct a home inspection today, she said. Your son called. Things escalated. My throat went dry. Escalated how? She shook her head. I can only share what concerns your granddaughter's welfare. The rest is confidential. That told me enough. As she stepped in, she scanned my home, clean spaces, steady routines, stability. She asked me questions about schedules, routines, meals, sleep, emotional support. All the things that create safety. Then she said something that startled me. We'll also be speaking with teachers, neighbors, and other caregivers. Standard procedure. I felt a shift, like puzzle pieces sliding into place. When will that begin? Today. That was the moment her mask, the one she wore in public settings, parent meetings, and school events, began to crack. By noon, teachers were giving statements. By 2, the nanny had called to provide hers. By 4, neighbors were contacted. And by dinner time, word had begun to quietly spread among community groups. The PTA president reached out to me privately, concerned. A church volunteer messaged saying she had noticed odd behavior for months. Even the school counselor requested a meeting. My granddaughter's world, built of small fears and quiet endurance, was suddenly being examined under bright, unflinching light. Late that evening, as I washed dishes, my phone buzzed again. A message from the PTA chair. Is it true? Is there an investigation? Then another from the church committee. We've had concerns about her for a while. Then another. Please keep us updated. We want the child safe. My daughter-in-law's perfect mother persona, glossy, practiced, admired, was beginning to unravel in places she never thought anyone would look. And she didn't even know how bad it was about to get. When my porch light flickered on automatically with the evening timer, I stood there for a long moment, listening to the quiet, feeling the shift in the air. An investigation had begun. Her mask was cracking. And the truth she worked so hard to bury was rising fast. And by the next morning, I could feel the air shift even before my eyes were fully open. There's a certain heaviness in a house when something is unfolding outside your control. A weight that settles into the corners, into the spaces between heartbeats. I felt it as soon as my feet touched the floor. My granddaughter was already at the kitchen table, tapping her spoon against her cereal bowl softly, as if making noise might summon trouble. I poured myself coffee, trying to steady my thoughts, but my hands trembled just enough for the mug to clink against the counter. She looked up at the sound, her expression tightening. It's all right, I told her, brushing her hair back gently. You're safe. She nodded, but her eyes tracked the front door the way a bird watches the sky for predators. Children sense tension long before adults admit it's there. A sharp knock hit the door at 9:12 a.m. Not loud. Not angry. But firm. My chest tightened. I opened it to find Investigator Morris again, her expression more focused than the day before. Mrs. Parker, she said in a low voice. May I come in? I stepped aside. She walked into the living room with the kind of controlled urgency that told me something significant had shifted. What happened? I asked. She lowered her clipboard. Your son called this morning. He reported an incident from last night. My breath caught. Is he all right? He is, she assured me. But your daughter-in-law reacted strongly to the investigation. There was a confrontation. I swallowed hard. I could picture it too vividly. My son trying to calmly ask questions, his wife spinning accusations, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. Is he safe now? I asked again. Yes. He left the house and is staying elsewhere for the time being. I exhaled slowly, the tension loosening just slightly from my shoulders. Still, something in the investigator's tone warned me the situation was deepening. There's more I need to confirm, she continued. Do you have a moment to talk privately? I glanced at my granddaughter. Go bring your puzzle box into the den, sweetheart. I'll be right here. She padded out quietly, hugging the box to her chest. Once she was out of earshot, the investigator's voice dropped. A financial pattern has emerged, she said. There are withdrawals and transfers your son can't account for. Substantial ones. A cold prickle ran across my skin. How substantial? I asked carefully. Enough to raise legal flags, she said. Enough to suggest mismanagement or worse. I closed my eyes for a moment. I'd spent decades watching families crumble not from one catastrophic event, but from hundreds of small fractures no one paid attention to. And now those fractures were widening. Your son provided access to recent bank statements, the investigator added. There are transfers to an unknown individual. Frequent transfers. A faint ringing filled my ears. He doesn't know who it is? No, she said simply. But he suspects. I didn't push the question. My daughter-in-law had always been too protective of her phone, too private about her errands, too quick to dismiss unexpected calls. But suspicion is not proof. And proof was what mattered now. May I ask something? I said quietly. Is this connected to the reports from the school or the nanny? The investigator hesitated. Pieces are intersecting, yes. But we need more before drawing conclusions. I appreciated her caution. Caution meant fairness. And fairness is something children deserve more than anyone. She stood. I need to do a brief walkthrough of your home again. And then I'll be meeting with your son to gather further statements. As I guided her through the rooms, she took note of small details. A neatly made bed, the night light in the hallway, the art supplies arranged on the shelf. Stability, safety, routine. Things my granddaughter leaned on like anchors. When the investigator left, I sat at the kitchen table and pressed my palms together. I hadn't prayed in years, but something about that moment, about secrets unraveling faster than anyone expected, made me close my eyes. Before I could collect myself, my phone buzzed. A message from my neighbor, Carol. You might want to check on your son. He drove past my house looking shaken. My heart lurched. I grabbed my keys. Sweetheart, get your shoes, I told my granddaughter. We're going for a short drive. She hurried over without question. Children cling to movement when stillness feels dangerous. We drove only 3 blocks before I saw him, my son, parked outside the community center, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. I pulled up beside him and rolled down the window. Come sit with us, I said softly. He stepped into the passenger seat, closing the door quietly, as if loud noises might break something fragile inside him. I need to tell you something, he whispered. Something I found. I didn't speak. I waited. She's been transferring money, he said, voice cracking. Not a little. A lot. Thousands. I nodded gently, giving him space. To a man, he added. A man I didn't know existed. My granddaughter looked up from the back seat, confused. I gave her a reassuring smile, knowing she didn't understand the weight of what her father was saying. Have you confronted her? I asked. He nodded. She denied everything. Said it was a mistake. Said I was paranoid. Then she blamed me for the investigation, said it was my fault people were turning against her. There was the reflex of someone cornered. Blame. Deflection. Rage disguised as self-defense. She threw things, he whispered. I had to walk out. My chest ached. Watching your child crumble, no matter how grown they are, cuts deeper than any betrayal. What are you planning to do? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know. But Investigator Morris said the financial pattern changes everything. It makes the case bigger than just neglect. He looked at me, eyes red. But there's something else, he added. Something she said when I confronted her. My breath held. She said she didn't need me. That she had someone who actually listens. Someone she could rely on. A chill spread across my back. And then she said, he whispered, that I'd regret ever speaking against her. Threats. Thinly veiled, but threats nonetheless. I reached across the seat, placing my hand over his. You're not alone in this. Not anymore. He nodded, swallowing hard. When we returned home, he stayed for dinner, though he barely touched his food. My granddaughter kept glancing between us, sensing something heavy but not understanding the shape of it. After we ate, I tucked her into bed. As she drifted off, I noticed a faint bruise on her wrist, the the same spot she'd been rubbing since the airport. I snapped a quick photo documenting it. Evidence matters. I learned that long ago. Later that night, the house quiet, my son and I sat in the living room with the lamp casting a warm glow across the floor. She had another phone, he said suddenly. I only realized because it wasn't in her purse when I checked. He keeps it hidden. She gets defensive when I ask where she's going. And she disappears for hours sometimes, claiming errands. A secret phone. Hidden transactions. Threats. Lies. A pattern forming in sharp lines. Do you think she might? He stopped, unable to finish. I think, I said carefully, there are things she never wanted you to see. He nodded slowly, taking in the gravity of it. What happens now? Now, I said, we tell the investigator everything. Every detail. Even the ones that hurt. The next morning, Investigator Morris returned, this time with a partner. Their presence felt heavier than before. More urgent, more formal. They sat with my son in the dining room, voices hushed but serious. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to busy myself with dishes while listening to the rhythm of their questions. Has she ever kept you from accessing bank accounts? Has she discouraged you from speaking to family or friends? Has she ever threatened to leave with the children? Each question chipped away at a facade my son had spent years protecting. At one point he broke down. I wiped my hands on a towel and rested my palm on his back. He leaned into it like he had when he was 5 and scraped his knee. When the investigators left, my son sat in silence. Finally, he whispered, "This is real now, isn't it?" "It's been real for a long time," I said softly. "Now it's just visible." That afternoon, something happened I hadn't expected. The PTA chair called me. Not to ask questions. Not to gossip. But to warn me. "We removed her from 3 committees today," she said. There were complaints from other parents. Concerns. Patterns. We didn't see it before, but now, it makes sense. And then she said something that startled me. Someone saw her with a man last month. At the school. They assumed he was a friend. But now, people are talking. More lines connecting. More shadows forming into a picture. By evening, the quiet unraveling of her reputation had become something louder, sharper. Not rumors, witnesses. Not suspicions, patterns. And then just before sunset my phone buzzed again. A message from the nanny. I remembered something important. Something she made me swear not to tell. "We need to talk." My hand stilled over the phone. There was another secret. Another door creaking open. And I knew. This one might be the one that turned the entire case against her. I didn't move at first. The weight of those words pressed against my chest, heavy and undeniable. I walked to the back porch where the cool evening air helped steady me. The sunset smeared the sky with orange and red, fading behind the trees. Quiet, calm, unbothered by the storm rising around my family. My son stepped outside, joining me without asking. "Is everything okay?" he murmured. "No," I said honestly. "But it will be." He didn't push further. He knew that tone. It was the same one I used when he was a boy and something in our lives was shifting. When change was coming whether we were ready or not. I called the nanny. She answered on the second ring, her voice trembling slightly. "Mrs. Parker, I should have told someone sooner. I'm sorry." "You're here now," I said gently. "Tell me what you remembered." "It's about the man she was seeing," she said. "He wasn't just someone. He gave her money. A lot of money. And she told me once, during an argument, that she didn't need your son anymore. That she had a backup plan if things fell apart." A coldness spread through me. "Backup plan," she said. The nanny paused, struggling with the memory. She said she could prove he wasn't a good father. That she was collecting things. Notes, photos, recordings. Things the court would use against him if she ever wanted full custody. My heart clenched. "She wasn't protecting the kids," the nanny whispered. "She was building a case. A fake case. She talked about making him look unfit so she could leave with the man and take the children for the financial support." My mouth went dry. "And then," the nanny added quietly, "she said you were her biggest obstacle. She called you the witness with too much memory. That's why she didn't want you around." The sunset dimmed into gray as the truth settled. The airport abandonment wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even cruelty in isolation. It was part of a plan. An ugly, calculated test to see if she could isolate my granddaughter without anyone interfering. Thank you, I told the nanny, meaning it more deeply than she knew. This changes everything. When I hung up, my son was watching me with a tense, unspoken question in his eyes. I nodded once. It's time, I said. The next day came cold and sharp, the kind of winter morning where the sky feels thin and brittle. We arrived at the courthouse before sunrise. Parents hurried in with coffee cups. Lawyers in long coats murmured into phones. The building loomed ahead, heavy with decisions that would shape lives. My granddaughter held my hand tightly as we walked through the entrance. Her small fingers curled around mine with trust and fear woven together. I squeezed back gently. Investigator Morris met us inside. Today's hearing will determine temporary custody, she said. Bring truth. Let everything else fall where it must. My son nodded. I felt him trembling beside me, still shaken by the discovery of financial betrayal, by the unraveling of a marriage he didn't realize was already coming apart at the seams. When our case number was called, the courtroom felt too warm, too enclosed. We took our seats on one side. My daughter-in-law swept in moments later, dressed impeccably as always, hair smooth, shoulders straight, expression carefully composed. But something in her eyes flickered with unease. She scanned the room, saw the investigator, saw my son's posture, saw the documents on the table. She knew something had shifted. Let's begin, the judge said. The hearing unfolded slowly at first. Questions about school attendance, medical appointments, the airport incident. My daughter-in-law spoke with the same honeyed tone she used at PTA meetings. It was all a misunderstanding, she insisted. She wandered off. I thought she was right behind us. My granddaughter flinched at the lie. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Parker, what did you witness? I spoke clearly, simply, without embellishment. Facts alone carry more weight than emotion in rooms like this. I found her sitting alone, I said. She told me she was instructed to stay. He was afraid to move. She believed she'd done something wrong. My daughter-in-law rolled her eyes subtly, a gesture she thought the judge didn't see. He did. Investigator Morris presented her findings next. Statements from teachers, attendance records, the nanny's documented incidents. Each page added another piece to the growing puzzle. Each detail chipped away at the mask my daughter-in-law fought to maintain. My son was asked to speak. His voice trembled but held strength. He admitted the truth. The financial discrepancies, the hidden phone, the threatening behavior the night he confronted her. My daughter-in-law's composure cracked. He's lying to save himself, she snapped. He's angry I'm the one taking care of everything. He wants to punish me. The judge raised a hand. Please keep your tone appropriate. But she didn't hear him. Her voice rose sharper, louder, all the polish slipping away. This is all her fault, she hissed, pointing at me. She turned him against me. She's been interfering since the day we got married. Enough, the judge said firmly. But she wasn't done. Not by far. You don't understand, she continued, desperate now. I had to be firm with that child. She lies. He manipulates. She's not as innocent as she looks. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My son's face went white. And then the judge said quietly, bring in Exhibit 14. Exhibit 14. The nanny's voicemail. The investigator played it gently, letting the words fill the room. Her voice. Describing fear. Describing the child left alone. Describing the wrist grabbing. Describing the plan to paint my son unfit. Describing the man she called her exit plan. Describing threats to make me disappear from the picture. My daughter-in-law's face drained of color. Her mouth opened slightly, shock, disbelief, panic. That's taken out of context, she cried. She hates me. She's making things up. The judge leaned forward. Is the financial record inaccurate? The second phone. The withdrawals to the man you met at school? The threats you made last night? Are those false too? Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Silence filled the courtroom. Thick, damning, undeniable. Finally, the judge made his ruling. For the safety and well-being of the child, he said slowly, temporary custody is assigned to Mrs. Parker. The father will have full visitation and may pursue guardianship pending continued investigation. The mother, he paused, his voice steady. The mother will receive supervised visitation only, until further notice. My daughter-in-law's breath came out in a sharp sob. You can't do this. She's mine. She is a child, the judge corrected. Not property. Her eyes shot toward me, burning with fury, desperation, disbelief. But beneath it all I saw something else. Fear. Real fear. The kind born when someone realizes the power they held through manipulation, image, intimidation, has vanished. The court adjourned. Papers were signed. Hands were shaken. The investigator thanked us for our cooperation. My son walked toward me, looking years older and decades lighter at the same time. Mom, he whispered, voice cracking, I'm so sorry. I placed a hand on his cheek. Guilt isn't needed now. Healing is. My granddaughter came to my side, slipping her small hand into mine. Her fingers were warmer than they had been in weeks. Safe fingers. Steady fingers. Outside the courthouse, the winter sun hung pale but bright. A cold breeze lifted my granddaughter's hair as she looked up at me. Nana, she whispered, are we going home now? Yes, sweetheart, I said, bending to kiss her forehead. We're going home. As we walked toward the car, my son a few steps behind us, I felt something inside me shift. Something long held, long strained. Strength doesn't always come from fighting. Sometimes it comes from standing still long enough for truth to catch up. At the car door, my granddaughter tugged my sleeve. Nana. Yes, love. Thank you for coming for me, she whispered. I knelt down so our faces were level. Her eyes, soft, trusting, healing, met mine. I'll always come for you, I said. I always will. She smiled. A small, tender smile. A new beginning. And as I buckled her into her seat and closed the door gently, I felt the final weight fall from my shoulders. Not revenge. Not triumph. Something deeper. Peace. I looked back at the courthouse, its cold concrete walls, its echoing halls, its judgment delivered. That was the day she faced the consequence of abandoning my granddaughter. And the day I reclaimed the strength I'd forgotten I still had. If this story touched you, shocked you, or made you root for justice, subscribe for more emotional, powerful revenge stories. Your support helps these stories reach women who need them.